Hello. Welcome to Spindale United Methodist Church. We're glad you've chosen to worship and learn with us today. May you have a blessed day and be drawn closer to our Lord. I will begin with a few announcements. There will be an Ad Council meeting today after today's worship service. Our September ministry of the month is the Path Shelter. They need donations of personal hygiene, toiletry, and cleaning products, as well as undergarments and socks for both children and adults. Check your weekly e-news or monthly newsletter for a full list of items needed. The Frankful Friday crew will be sharing a free hot dog meal this Friday, September the 8th. Meal prep will begin at 10. We will be set up under the tree next to the blessing box at 12 noon. Mark your calendars for Saturday Night Alive. Coming this September 23rd at 6:30 p.m., we are kicking off a brand new community gathering. Come together to celebrate the soft launch of Saturday Night Alive. The official launch will begin in January. On September 23rd, we will have food and games. Please bring your favorite board games. Start spreading the word. Note, if you'd like to volunteer, please contact Pastor Eric. God is good. All the time. God. Amen. Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for the approach of fall and all its beauty. We praise you for your love and care. We remember in the beauty that you are there in all seasons and are with us in all circumstances. Help us to share this wonderful gift with others at every opportunity. Help us to always seek your face and walk in your way. Bless the message and the messenger today. Send us out renewed and excited about your word and your way. Amen.
it on the entire, is it work now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me in the back? All right, let's do this. I want to welcome you back to part 2 of our sermon series called How Did I Get Here? And I learned last week that many of you are fans of the band The Talking Heads, right? Most of you, at least if you weren't, you've researched it during the week to see how cool they are, same as it ever was. Well, they have this cool song called Once in a Lifetime that features that, and also says, it speaks of a guy who ends up in a situation. He speaks of, he lives in this house, he has his wife, he has these kids, has this dog, whatever, this job. He's like, how did I get here? How did I get here ultimately? And I think it really speaks to us, those of us in our faith walk, about how did we get to where we are right now. Now I do wonder, how many of you have ever been in a hurry, or so rushed, or so confused, that it blurred your judgment to the degree that you did something that you shouldn't have done? Anyone? Oh, everyone, raise a hand high. You know you did. Now, there's a caveat. Walter really raised his hand. There's a caveat to this, and maybe you won't follow me on this stream of consciousness, but it's maybe you did that because it's like something like pushing a button or a switch or a mechanism of some kind that you knew you probably shouldn't push or pull. Has anyone ever done that? Am I by myself? Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it, because Josh is in this story. I was helping. It's kind of like I was helping the Root family cutting the grass out here a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, and Josh is such a great teacher. I mean, he was like volunteering his string trimmer to me, and I've used string trimmers thousands of times, not Josh's, but I've used string trimmers thousands of times. And he was very fatherly. This is the choke, and this is the on and off, and you do this, do it 3 times, spin around, and whatever, it'll start. And I was like, I don't feel like I need you to tell me this. I didn't tell him that, but I'm thankful that he told me. The problem was I wasn't listening. I had mentally escaped that. And so he left. They were leaving after that. I was here by myself. Well, Josh was still out here. He was getting ready to leave. And so I'm going back, and I'm looking at the string trimmer going, oh my gosh, what did he just tell me? And something didn't click in my brain that this is where you pull to start it. What I looked at was a connector for the spark plug, which looked just like, Steve's going, oh my gosh. It looked just like, to me, in the moment, like the starter. And Josh is, yeah. So I pulled that thing, and I just pulled the whole thing out. And I'm standing there with this black wire in my hand going, I just killed his weed trimmer. And then I had to drive my little lawnmower around front and tell Josh, I felt like I was a kid again, telling my dad, I just destroyed your property. Forgive me, Mara. Mara's got her head bowed now. Don't do it. You know, all that to say, I'm throwing myself on the altar of dignity here. I did that. But the reason I say this, a very important point that emerges from my lack of judgment in that moment, and it's this. If you're not familiar with something's purpose, if you don't understand what it's all about, you're likely to misuse it. You're likely to abuse it. You're likely, whatever other word rhymes with those first 2 words, you're likely to not handle it correctly. In fact, that's the very reason why some of you today might be frustrated, because you don't understand what your purpose is. I mean, you may be loyal and showing up at church and those kind of things, and I think this church really gets serving and understanding those kind of things, but maybe you're still a little confused as to what your purpose is in all of this, right? And so today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to find out, hopefully together, collectively, your why, your purpose, your what. Now, to this point, in Acts chapter 13, verse 36, there's this one verse where Luke, who's the author, talks about King David, and we all know who King David is, but this is what he said. This is what the verse says. It says, now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep, which means what? He died, or in King Jimmy language, he gave up the ghost, right? Right, Sheila? He gave up the ghost. He's not here. So David fell asleep, and he was buried with his ancestors, and then his body decayed. Now, that last verse, I'm not sure why they needed to tell us that. That's kind of gross and too much information. His body decayed. I think we kind of figured that one out. But in truth, the first part is just amazing if you think about it. Why? Because he found his calling. He understood his why. He accomplished his what. He served God's purpose. In fact, Dr. Miles Monroe is a pastor, he's a Bahamian pastor, who talked about purpose. And he said this, he said, the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but a life without purpose. And in truth, I think most of us would agree, really, that this is an accurate statement. And so with that said, what I want to do, you seem so excited this morning, the energy is just bouncing off the walls. I can feel it. What I want to do is I want to give us 3 principles of purpose that will hopefully, if you're not there, if you're not sure what your purpose is, maybe this will help kind of hone in on that where you won't pull the wrong thing on the weed trimmer too like I did. You understand purpose. And here's the first one. Your purpose, and this is going to hurt a little bit, your purpose isn't for you. Your purpose is for God. How many people didn't know that? Anyone not know that? Would you admit it if you didn't know that? Your purpose is not for you. Betsy, that's painful, isn't it? You got a look of pain on your face. Because we don't like to hear it. That my purpose is not for me, my purpose is for God. Now, for the person of faith, this is super important, and in truth, David understood this clearly, which kind of led him to write this in Psalm chapter 57, verse 2. He said, I cry out to God Most High, to the God who will fulfill his purpose in me. Now, what I love about David is that as it all played out, he wasn't actually trying to find his purpose ever, really. But rather, through his connection with God, through prayer and meditation and study, etc., his God-given purpose kind of found him, if realistically, in reality. In fact, that is a great segue to the second principle of purpose, which is this. We find our purpose inside of God's purpose. Now, when you look at David, what you'll find is that, first of all, he wasn't perfect. If you know his story, he was far from perfect, and really he never pretended to be perfect, really, overall. But at the same time, he found favor in the eyes of God because he trusted God, and he followed God, and he devoted his life to God. In other words, David kept it real, and David kept it simple, long before keeping it real and keeping it simple were cool. This is what David did. His focus was on what God would want. In fact, this is what Psalm chapter 78, verse 70 says about what David was doing when God chose him as a king of Israel. It says this, it says, he, God, chose his servant David, calling him from where? The sheep pens. He took David from tending the ewes and the lambs and made him the shepherd of Jacob's descendants, God's own people, Israel. So what was David doing here? What was David up to? I mean, was he preaching? Was he writing volumes of systematic theology? Woo, that's wonderful, isn't it? No, he was farming. He was following the little critters. He was herding them, and he was tending sheep. So yeah, for David, he kept the faith really simple. You see, again, and continuing with this example from David's life, for those of us who might say, I don't know how I can serve God, I'm kind of lost, I'm just don't know. Well, let me expand this point a little bit further. You need to know that David, thank God, was not a televangelist. He never did that. He didn't have his own show where he wore a lot of makeup and had a really big smile, those kind of things. He wasn't a biblical scholar. He wasn't even a deacon or an elder, Lord forbid. But rather, he was just a normal guy who was faithful in the small details of his faith life. In other words, for David, his focus wasn't on the quick fix that other religions offer. You know what I mean? The potions, the tonics, the salves, the trinkets, the self-help manifestos, not knocking any of that, but you're probably not going to find God through that. You're going to find God by searching for God, right? So it's not through that, but rather it was through his patience and his faithfulness in the small things where he found God and God found him. So there was this beautiful collision. And so, yeah, I hope you get what I'm saying here. If you want to find your purpose in this life, it's important to know that, first of all, there are no shortcuts. There really aren't. I mean, you can't pull the spark plug connector and expect it to start. And second, you need to understand that your purpose is not for you. Your purpose is for God. So in short, we just need to be patient and attentive to to what God is trying to tell us. And then number 3, if you want to serve God's purpose, start serving God's people. You just knew I was going to say that, didn't you? You knew that was coming. You were waiting for it. You were holding your breath, and you're also thinking at the same time, dude, that is so lame. Why would you say that? I mean, I wanted to do something extraordinary in my life, like write this great book or start my own faith-based business or have my own TV show. But serving God's people, come on, dude, raise the bar a little bit here. But if you're thinking that, and by your faces, I think you are thinking that a little bit, let me just say this. It is never lame to love people. It is never lame to love people. And the best way to love other people is to do what? Serve other people. In fact, serving others is the reason Jesus came here, right? This is what Mark chapter 10, verse 45 says. It says, "For even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." You see, the truth is that, as many of you know, I am not the brightest light in the hall. I don't know if you knew that. If you talk to me, pretty soon you'll figure out he's not the brightest light in the hall, in some ways, right? But from experience, I am a lifelong learner, so from experience, here's something that I've learned along the way. When we choose to serve other people, the cool thing that happens is that God will meet us there and open our eyes and show us things we may have never seen before. I mean, it's kind of like this. I have 2 examples. I could give many. We could be here all day and pack a lunch and all that good stuff, and I'm going to give you 2 examples. The first one is, you know, Sean and I play pickleball about every Friday, and a couple of Fridays back, maybe a month ago, we played, and after I beat him, I let him speak. I mean, I was gloating and all that, but I let him speak, and he told me a story. He was like, you know, this lady, and I won't mention her name, but she comes and helps us at the community meal. And it's like, yeah, I know her. We're talking about that. He said, well, she told me at the last Frankfurt Fridays that she had a leak in her roof. I said, really? And he said, and I'm sorry, I was running a little late. That's where I was. I was fixing a roof. I was like, oh my gosh. And I just felt very, because he's so young. And at that age, I was so far away from where he is in faith. I was just like fatherly. I was like almost tearing up. It just like blew my mind that he took it upon himself just to go and give her something that he could do to help her in that situation. Someone who's not a member of the church. I mean, she helps us with the community meal on the Frankfurt Fridays. So it doesn't matter. Folks, we're all in this together. Sean showed the initiative, okay? Tell him, after the pickleball remark, tell him I bragged about him too, because and then there they are. Yeah, I mean, that just blew my mind. The second example is this, and I've poked fun at her about this, and we've had a good time, and I hope you know me by now. That's just who I am. But Carolyn has the biggest heart of any person. Look, she's going to shake her head and look at me and throw darts at me when it comes to animals. I've never in my life seen a person who I love dogs. It's the opposite of cats for me. I love dogs. Dogs are everything. And recently, I think it was your niece, there was like 4 dogs on the side of the road, and this was on a Sunday, right before they were going on vacation, and the next day, right? And so we're out there grabbing these dogs, or she gets them, and then we have to figure out where they're going on. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a funny story.